we are not alone.
These are supposed to be some of the most verified images of giants.
People who do meditation for 60 days will lengthen their telomeres.
Soon we'll get results, and we'll let you know right here on Beyond Belief. Things seem to be changing in the field of ufology.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
That's priceless.
Isn't that amazing?
Tesla wanted free energy, and look what happened to him.
Plenty of evidence to show that they're real. The real question is how and why.
There were Egyptian hieroglyphs out in the outback of Australia.
In Australia.
What are the possibilities? Mars was inhabited, and these were built. We almost can't duplicate today. These are amazing topics. What if there was something like at Area 51 deep underwater?
They were killed by some animal.
Believe me, we're just getting started. I'm George Norrie, and we here at Gaia are committed to revealing the truth.
Broadcasting from the confines of an abandoned radio station in the secluded apartment building of High Strangeness on the foothills of the Colorado Rockies, it is time for full disclosure of the topics they told us were off limits. Hello there, I'm Connie Willis. This is Coast to Coast AM. And tonight, cryptids and a pirate. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Time now to turn off the lights and join me for another interesting evening of conversation, much needed education, and the chance that we might get a little closer to the truth of what lurks amongst us and what is beyond. I'm Connie Willis, and this is Coast to Coast AM. The two guys tonight, we're going to bring on Javier and also Jesus. I think we have both of you here. Hey there, how are you guys doing? Welcome to Coast, first-time guests.
Hello. Hi, Connie.
Hey, Javier, is Jesus with us? Hey there, Jesus.
Hello.
Hi. So now you guys got to be very careful about stepping on each other, okay? I know you're a good team. So okay, here we go. You guys are on Coast to Coast. You've done some wonderful work, and that's why I wanted to bring you on. Both extremely sincere, and it's not just Bigfoot; it's Dogman. So, but I don't know who wants to talk first. But tell me about how you guys pulled together, how you even got into this in the first place, to pull together a team.
Well, let me start. This is Javier. So let me start, Connie, first by saying, I want to thank Coast to Coast AM and as also, Connie, for having us on. It's an honor to be on your show. And I also want to say hi to all the Coast to Coast AM listeners and all the Blue Rockers out there.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Now, we started back in 2017, late 2017, going out to this area called Avocado Lake. It's an area 30 minutes east of Fresno, California, in Central Valley, California. And what happened is we heard a story about a family of Bigfoots being out in this area. So we live in a small town called Wheatley, California. And again, it's 30 minutes east of Fresno, California. So we started going out there. We just heard the Bigfoot or Avocado Lake area. That's just 15 minutes from where we live. So we wanted to go out there and maybe catch a glimpse or experience something, right? And so a group of friends, we get together, we start going out there. We go about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, and just park and sky watch, just listen. There's citrus around this lake. There's lemon trees. There's oranges. So there's a lot of citrus, a lot of acreage surrounding this lake. And then also it's the beginning of the hills to the mountains. And going up to, there's also a dam out there called Pine Flat Dam. So we're going out there, and that was like in late 2017, just sky watching, because it's also a UFO hotspot area. That now I find out, it's a hotspot area for UFOs.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so it's, so we're going out there, and just that's how it started. And then and come to 2018 in June, it was me, my cousin, go out to Avocado Lake, just a little north of Avocado Lake, there's a bridge. And what happened, the river that passes through there, it's called the Kings River, comes down from the dam. And there's a bridge, and we park out there. And we sky watch. And this particular night, on June of 2018, we had just gotten some night vision goggles.
Nice.
And it's not no fancy night vision goggles. We don't have any fancy high-tech equipment, okay? It's just these, it was a Nerf brand night vision goggles from the toy guns. We were just trying them out there, see how well they work. So we both had them, and my cousin was using one, I was using one, and we just, we were parked on the side of the bridge on a turnout. And so it was at dusk. We had just gotten there, so it was already getting dark. And what happened, my cousin started using the goggles, and he was looking down into the river, and he noticed some what looked like eye shine from down below the river. And he said it was two pair of eyes that they looked like eyes. And he was telling me this, and I even looked, and they sure did. It looked like they were looking right back at us. So I told him to keep an eye on it with the goggles, and see if they actually blink or like eyes. So he was concentrated on that, and I was over here messing with the other night vision goggles, getting a feel for it. I would put them on, and I would look at all the mountain ridge around us, and behind us is a little mountain, the beginning of the ridge behind us. So as he was doing that, I was just scoping it out, and then I lowered my night vision goggles to my chest. I turn around, and all of a sudden I see this huge creature waving its arms, muscular arms up in the air. And I'm in awe. I didn't say anything to my cousin because I didn't want to lose visual. I thought I was looking at a Sasquatch. And this thing was moving its arms in the air. And then it got on all fours, and it started running along the ridge behind us. And this is 20 yards behind us, Connie. Just 20 yards behind us. So it was running on all fours, and then it picked up its arms again in the air, and it grabbed onto the side of the mountain. And meanwhile, I can all the outline of this creature. It was muscular. It was muscle. There was no fat. I mean, this thing was lean, like bodybuilder type, And when it lifted up its arms, I could see its hands. It had human hands.
Mm.
And I'm looking at this. I was like, man, meanwhile, I'm thinking it's a Sasquatch. Man, this is a big Sasquatch. I'm finally seeing the Sasquatch. And then it raised up its hands again, and it grabbed onto the side of the hill there. And that's when it turns its head to the side. And that's when I saw the snout. I saw the canines. He had his mouth open, and the pointy ears. And then I go, what? That's not a Sasquatch. What the hell am I seeing? It has a dog. It grabbed on, and it leaped up again. That's when I saw the size. The sides were muscular. The calves were muscular. The whole body was muscular. The back came down to a V shape. And then it crawled on all fours over the ridge like a spider on its belly.
Oh.
And this happened like within a minute. This thing was fast. The height of the creature, I would have to say, was 8 to 10 feet tall. And the width of the chest had to be 4 to 5 feet wide.
Mm. Well, you never thought you'd see, it's bad. It's tough enough that you never think you're going to see a Bigfoot, but then when you see something, you never think it's going to be a Dogman.
Yeah, and I go, what? It has a dog head on it, and I never Dogman East Coast or in the Midwest. I heard stories of that, but I never thought they were out here in California. And when I saw that, it's like, whoa, what am I seeing? It's not Sasquatch.
Now, was this the same sighting that I remember you telling me about that had the other visual in it that I'll let you explain if it was on this one? Was it this encounter that you saw the shorts?
Yes. So
oh, please tell that.
Ridge, I'm sorry?
Yeah, please tell that.
Okay, so as it was going up the ridge, I was getting, I was trying to remember all the detail on it. And when it was going up the ridge, it grabbed the side of the hill and it turned its head. I also noticed that when I looked at its thighs, it had what resembled as ripped shorts. So then I'm thinking, man, this is a werewolf?
Yes.
In movies. It's like, what the heck?
That's what was interesting. I remember you telling the story before, and it was right after we had talked. Well, I remember at least asking you about this around the time I was talking with Paul Sinclair out of the UK. And, we were talking about, hey, Dogman over there is Werewolf. And I just thought, well, of course, that makes sense. And I remember asking, I think I even just happened to ask you, did you see anything like that? And or whatever it was, you had said, Connie, this thing had ripped up shorts on like they have been that's exactly what happened with the werewolf, right? They were a man, and then all their clothes ripped up as they got, turned into the werewolf. And you actually saw it with shorts, and the shorts were ripped up.
That's what it looked like, Connie. You know how you have the hanging jeans when they're all ripped like shorts?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looked like.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, this thing was stealth. As it was running on all fours, it didn't make any sound. And we're the only ones out there. So you would have to hear breathing or growling or any movement of the rock as it went up the ridge there. Nothing. It didn't make any sound at all. It was stealth.
That is so interesting too, because all these other big creatures, sometimes they make such loud noises and thumps, and you hear it and you even feel it. And then other times there's like nothing. Jose and Javier are with us tonight. Or Jose, no, it's Jesus that's with us. Jose is not. Jose missed the boat tonight, I guess, right? But we got Jesus and Javier here with us tonight. Jesus, let's bring you up on this question. And how did you guys come up with the Cryptid 559? I was surprised at, okay, it's as easy as that. But then tell me also your all's kind of your mission, your goals.
Well, as far as the name, Javier came up with that name on his own, and honestly, I like it. I mean, it ties in where we're from and what it is that we're doing. So, I mean, 559 is our zip code, and cryptids. Well, now we could say that not only is Bigfoot running around here in the Central Valley, but Dogman and other cryptids that we've come across in our research.
Do you have a certain mission, or have you thought, hey, we're just going to go out and find these things, hopefully because we're hearing about it, and then you started seeing this and that and started putting some of the pieces together? Do you think you have some good theories or ideas now?
Well, I guess our mission initially when we first started going out because of that report of Bigfoots being here near our backyards, literally, was to spot these Bigfoots. But when Javier had his encounter with this Dogman, I mean, I wanted to get my experience, and well, fortunately, that day in particular, I was at work, so I wasn't able to go out with them and explore. But when he told me the following day, I mean, I was just stoked. I was just picking his brain, wanted to, know everything that he was able to see and feel, like, because when you have this type of experience, it comes with a feeling as well. So I was just picking his brain, and I remember going the following day to this particular area because, well, I was sure that there was still something there. So we ended up going the following day to see what was left behind, like what evidence. And fortunate enough that we saw a footprint. It wasn't your typical footprint of a dog, a coyote. No, this paw was huge. It was unexplainable. And I remember, if I remember correctly, Javier put it out on YouTube, and he had some people that had a little bit more knowledge than us and come on and say, yeah, that's definitely a Dogman paw print. So, I mean, that in itself, like, hey, you know what? We're in a hot spot, and we're getting some good evidence. And I mean, like you mentioned, we're not professionals. We do this because we like going out there and exploring. And I mean, hearing that we have Bigfoots in our backyard, I mean, that was amazing. And Javier brought this up earlier. We always heard stories of Bigfoots being out in different states, and to hear that they were in our backyard, I mean, that was just amazing. And to be able to go out there and look for these stuff and have this type of experience, I mean, happen to him at least. I mean, I'm still waiting for my opportunity to see one of these creatures, but I mean...
Well, what I'm looking forward to is, Jesus, you are, now tell everybody what you're doing right now school-wise. What are you going for degree-wise right now?
Okay. Well, yes, I believe yesterday we were talking on Blue Rock, and I brought up that I haven't been able to go out investigating a lot because I've been really tied up with school. I'm pursuing a engineering degree, physics degree, and a math degree. So as a lot of people could probably relate, I mean, it's just a lot of hard work, crunching and reading. Reading and crunching numbers. But not only that, I'm also a parent, so I'm tied up. And I mean, I haven't been able to go out. But when stuff does come our way, there's a little more critical think when it comes to our evidence.
Well, what I like too is that you're going to use the education that you get, and you already have it in mind, and you're keeping this in mind and being prepared to create these things where you're going to create some devices that can actually measure some of the things that no one's been able to measure yet. And, you know, that's one of your ideas and goals.
That is correct. Yes. I know we talked about some kind of device that can project some laser beams, for example, up into a mountain. The technology seems rather easy as far as like projecting the lasers and collecting the data, but it's more in the software where, you know, we hope to be cutting edge, where we can develop that laser technology where we could monitor a mountainside and be, you know, kind of far away from the test area, not to give ourselves away, but still be able to collect evidence to prove, hey, like, wait a minute, there's movement in this quadrant of the mountain. Let's focus on that and see what it is. If it turns out to be natural to the area, then we can dismiss it and focus our area to focus our attention to another area. So stuff like that.
I like that. I like that you're putting, first of all, congratulations. It's amazing to do 3 degrees at the same time, but with mathematics, engineering, and what was the other one? Physics?
Physics.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I don't even need to say anything. That's amazing. Good luck with that. Javier, let's go back to you. Give us another encounter that has happened.
Okay, so I'm going to start it off, and then I'll give it back to Jesus because he was with me during this encounter. It was September of 2020. Ironically, it was at the same location as the Dogman encounter by the bridge. And we were going out at dusk again. It was getting dark. And I had a DeWalt spotlight that I took with me. So we park and we get off the van. Same place, Connie, it's the same place. Get off the van, and then we're just listening and feeling the atmosphere. And I kid you not, less than 5 minutes later, I hear this screech coming out of the river, a loud screech noise. So I point the spotlight, you know, it's a pretty good spotlight, so it lights up the whole area. where I'm pointing. So out of this shrub I see a bird coming out. I see a bird coming out. Now, Jesus, you want to take over?
Yes. So we're focused in this little island near the Kings River, and we're trying to focus our attention to where that sound comes. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint where the noise is coming from, but we're not necessarily focused on the sky. And all of a sudden, we noticed this huge bird come out of nowhere and just flies right past us towards a bridge. So again, we're just amazed that, we got to witness this different type of bird. So, I think we briefly make eye contact, Javier and I, and we're just taking all this information down. So, the critical thinker in me, I'm trying to gauge the size of this bird. So I'm looking for details like that to give me a perspective to at least give a size of this flying bird. So, it was really quick. Again, it was maybe no more than 2 minutes. So we see this bird go off on the distance past the bridge. So we started thinking about it like, dude, what did you see? And then we started describing the features of this bird. And it was not your typical bird. And what I mean, the best way that I can describe it to the audience, it's a bird, but this bird didn't have feathers. This bird had a different type of head. I don't recall seeing feet on this bird, but one odd thing a couple odd things were the color and the lack of feathers. The skin was almost leathery, and the best way that I can describe it to you all is a pterodactyl.
Is that what you thought as well, Javier?
Yes, that's what I saw after we were discussing it. Because when I told Jesus, look, there's a bird coming out of the shrub, and I turned around because I was looking behind us because I know what's behind there. Dogman, I don't want no surprises. So I'm looking around, and I told Jesus, look at that bird coming out of it made that loud screech, so look at that bird coming out of that shrub, and he kept an eye on it. And then he tells me, Javier, that's a huge bird. And when he said that, I put it on there, and sure enough, it had a huge wingspan, and it's like a bat. Like the skin was leathery, like Jesus said. It was brownish, grayish color, no feathers. The wings again reminded me like a bat. It had that, you can see I don't know how you describe it, but it's like a bat wing. And then the head, it had a little nub on the top of the head, and then its long beak, at least 2 feet long. And then it just flapped its wings once, and it was off the ground real slow. And then it did it again in the air real slow, and it went over the bridge casually, and it went towards the dam. And again, I didn't see any feet, but it's, I've heard of pterodactyl encounters here in the valley, and now we saw one.
So you got the Dogman, you got the pterodactyl in the same area.
In the same area, yes.
Has there been any other sightings in that area of something other than those two?
Well, just the Bigfoot family. That was in that same area. It was a family of Bigfoot.
Oh, well.
And then
you got about 3 minutes if you can tell us that story.
We've heard it was a video that actually went viral, and we were watching it. It was another group from here in the valley. They shared that video. And that's how we found out about the Bigfoot family around Avocado Lake and all that. That's why we're going out there.
When you go to that area, because these areas are everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. These areas where all sorts of things, that's my total belief and what I've found, where all sorts of things are in these areas, these pockets. So
yes.
Do you have a different feeling when you're there, or do you see anything different, or do you recognize something that might give a sign that this area is different, or or no?
Yes, me and Jesus or my cousin Jose, when we all go out there or whoever we take out there, we always ask each other, what are you feeling? Is any of us feeling something? Because sometimes we're all feeling the same thing, or one of us is picking it up. Like, meaning someone's getting a headache, a stomach ache, they're getting chills, or they're just not feeling like they feel something's like not right. So we're always asking each other. But you can, when I'm out there and I'm feeling stuff, you can sense the atmosphere change. Like from 1 minute to another, it changes quick.
So you guys also had some encounter with some things up in the sky. Was that another location?
That was at another location. It's more closer to the hills. It's about, I'm going to say 15 minutes east of Wheatley, where we live, closer to the hills, another area. Me and my family had a UFO encounter, the black triangles, back in the late 80s.
How big were those? Wow.
Those things, there was 2 of them, Connie, and they were side by side. And those things were stealth. It was late at night. You want me to go ahead and tell?
Yeah. We got a couple minutes here.
Okay, so it was about 8:30, 9 o'clock. We were heading home. We lived out in the country, closer to the hills. Our house was in the middle of a citrus orchard, way out in the country, in the middle of a citrus orchard. And we were heading home, and I was looking up at the sky like I always did, and I was telling my dad, I see lights, Dad, I see lights. There's something in the sky. And you know, it's a plane, it's a helicopter. And this time, I told my dad, Dad, I see some lights. And my dad stayed quiet. And he was driving, and he was looking, and he was driving, and he never said anything. And after a while, he said, that's not a plane. That's not a helicopter. So then he ends up pulling over to the side of the road. And we all got off. It was my little brother, me, my mom, and dad. We all got off. I remember we all got off, and we were staring up. And these things were not high. They were low to the ground. I could almost, if I were to reach, I could almost touch them. That's how low they looked.
Oh, my. That's pretty close. And by the way, you guys were just asked, before we get into the story, you guys were just asked to be at like your first conference, right?
Yeah, we've been asked to be at UFO Con in March in San Francisco.
Congratulations. I know that's really a special thing. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah,
what's that?
We're very excited.
Yeah, getting on coast. Hey, Blue Rocker, come on. You're the man. Okay. So you, when we left off, there was, the black triangles, you and your family, your dad was, I guess, just recognizing it at the point that, wow, that's not a plane or a helicopter.
Right. So he pulled over to the side of the road. We all get off. We're staring up at the sky, and they were low, very low. And there was 2 of them, and they were huge black triangles. Side by side together, and they were blacking out the stars so you can see the shape. And also they had these white lights, and at every point of the triangle there was white lights, and then one in the center, which was a red light. Both of these had the same lights, and so we knew it was 2 crafts. You can see them; they were side by side, and they went over us, hovering over us. They didn't make a sound. There was no engine sound. There was nothing. You couldn't hear anything. They were just hovering over us, gliding, and heading east towards the mountains. And we were just watching them as they went over us, and then they went closer to the mountains, heading east. And I'm thinking about it now. It's like they were going to the Sierras, and on the other side of the Sierras is Area 51. It's Nevada.
Oh, wow. Well, just the Sierras alone is pretty creepy, right? I mean, it's got a lot of things going on there.
Yeah, so where we're at, it's like almost right across from Area 51 if you just go in a straight line, just about.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So when on our YouTube channel, we make all these videos. We go out to the locations where the encounters happened, and we talk about it and make our encounter video there. And then we have exploration videos that we go out and check these areas that we get. Somebody told us about an encounter in a certain area, so we'll go out there and we'll go investigate and see if we can find evidence. So I was telling my mom, I'm going to make a video about the UFO that we saw back in the 80s. And she goes, did I ever tell you after we saw those UFOs that 3 consecutive nights she goes, I want to say it was a dream, but it felt real to me. But she would wake up in the middle of the night hovering above my dad with the red light on her. And she couldn't move, yeah. So she couldn't move. She could only move her eyes, and she could see my dad sleeping on the bed. But she saw this beam of red light coming through the ceiling of the house, and she was hovering in the air. And she said that happened for 3 consecutive nights. I told my mom, no, you never told us that.
You know, I wonder, I was going to ask, did you all have any missing time? And then you told that story. I wonder if the rest of you also dealt with something and you just don't remember.
I don't remember if we did it. You know, I was a kid, 10 years old. My brother was smaller. My dad doesn't remember. And then...
and most don't.
And another thing, we all stayed quiet after that. We never talked about it until, like, weeks later when we were having a party at my grandpa's. Somebody brought up UFO, and all of a sudden we all started talking about it.
You know, I mean, tell me what you think, but what I think when that happens is, you know, whatever that trance they put you in, you just forget, and it's all about forgetting until somebody can use a trigger word, and then once that, you know, it wears off at one point. To me, what I've found is it wears off in about 2 weeks. That's what I've noticed. And I think when somebody throws a trigger word and you are conscious enough to remember these things, that's when it pops back up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I've heard other stories other people have that it's happened to them. It's very similar.
So I don't want to leave out Jesus, so I don't know if you want to tell one of the other stories. I know you guys have several, but otherwise, let's just hear another story before we take some phone calls.
Jesus, do you want to talk about Pictograph Mountain?
Sure.
I love Pictograph Mountain. Yes.
Yes. So we named this mountain Pictograph Mountain, and the reason for that is we were introduced to this mountain by the owner, and specifically Javier knows this person because of his father working for the owner. So he invited us to take a peek and look up there and try and figure what the pictures on the rocks meant. So we went up there with an idea as to where more or less they were located. He and another group of friends managed to get there on their first try, and it was amazing. I mean, they took awesome photos. They got a feel for the area. It was beautiful, but at the same time it was creepy. So when it was my turn to go up there with him, I was just blown away of the drawings on these rocks, and there's some other interesting aspects of this mountain that just baffles the mind as to why and how it was created. There was a rock in particular way at the top near these pictographs that seems to be cut, and it's cut in a quadrant. So it's almost like a chair. But the interesting thing about this chair, that piece that was cut is behind the rock. There is no way that this rock could have fallen and that piece that's missing ending up behind it. So, I mean, that's just baffling. I mean, there's no way to explain that occurrence happening naturally. And like I was talking about the pictographs, I mean, some of the drawings on these rocks are just amazing. It's hard to describe them. I would encourage everyone to go to our YouTube channel and watch that video and look at it and see what you guys think they represent. To me, on one of the pictures, it's a man with horns. Like, what can that be? We've been told that it could be a shaman that was living up there many years ago. I mean, I don't know. And, I mean, it's an amazing experience to see these, but it's even more fascinating to be there and just feel the energy. I know we talked a little bit about the feeling when we're out there investigating, but when we're there, boots on the ground, these locations have a different feel. And it's not like your day-to-day feel where, it's just like a calm. No, this is like high energy. There has been times where like this energy is so high that you're like, wait a minute, I'm not feeling too good about what we're doing today. I'm going to back up, and I'm going to pivot a little bit from Pictograph Mountain to another investigation that we were at, where I had that feeling, but Javier was totally comfortable. And so there's this island of eucalyptus trees near a busy road here in town where we live. So Javier had mentioned that there was a lot of movement, a lot of change within these eucalyptus trees, and that it would be an interesting area to go and investigate. That day I was available, and I mean, I was game. I'm like, yeah, we're on another investigation. So we get to the area, and I start getting this feeling of I probably shouldn't be here. But Javier was feeling great. I mean, he was pumped up, like he was feeling good. So I communicated with him my feeling, my uneasiness, and I told him, you know what? You continue because you're feeling something that is telling you to go for it. I'll stay behind. I'll snap pictures, and we'll take it from there. So as I'm having that feeling, he's over there exploring, investigating this. It's almost like a dry creek. And in this area where the eucalyptus trees are, it's an abandoned house. And, I mean, for whatever reason, the previous tenants of the house, I mean, just moved away, and it's been abandoned for at least 3 years. And no attempt has been made to sell, rent, or take care of the property. So that's odd. But going back to the investigation that day, I wasn't feeling like I was worthy of being there. So I was taking all these pictures. Javier was hearing stuff within the brush, but he couldn't see anything. So later that evening or the following day, he starts looking through the photos that I took. And in the bushes, you could see a figure, or actually a couple figures, looking at him while he's investigating around that dry creek area.
And is that the one, Javier, that was like really close?
Yes.
I remember
there was one up in the tree looking down at me, and one right in front of me. And,
yeah, I remember you showing me the picture, and I said, where is it? And then you said, well, look. And then, because I was trying to look beyond, and it was like right there on you.
Yeah, they were right there. I can feel them. I can smell them. I can hear them. I knew they were there, and there was a bunch of them there. People say it's Dogman up in the tree, and then the other one looks like a Sasquatch. I've never seen a Sasquatch, so people that have encounters with Sasquatch, they tell me it's a Sasquatch. Now these two are together, so are they getting along?
Yeah, that's my question always when people say, "Well, do you think the aliens and the Bigfoot and all of them are friends?" All I say is I've seen them. They all hang out together. I don't know if they like each other, but I've seen them all hanging out together a lot. I want to go back to Pictograph Mountain because the pictures that I've seen, that's also the rock figure that looks like it is this huge Sasquatch head.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
That's amazing because you guys, it truly, I mean, you all obviously know because you took the picture, but it truly looks like it's an area and it's kind of like an Easter Island type statue, but it's a head of a Sasquatch. And that's really a great find. How did that, when you all saw that, did you just at that point go, holy moly, look at this. It's a Sasquatch.
Well, it's actually that one is on a different mountain. It's not even Pictograph Mountain. It's close to Pictograph Mountain. But it's a separate one. Yeah.
But it's got a pictograph on the side of it, so I thought it was a Pictograph Mountain.
The other one looks like a Native American side profile of a Native American.
Yes.
Yep.
And those mountains are adjacent to each other.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Now, what about game cams?
Okay, so one time we went out and we left game cams up there at different spots that we feel are pretty active. And we tested them before we took them out there. Everything was working fine. One is even Wi-Fi. It has Wi-Fi capability, so when it takes a picture, I get it on my phone. So we left these out there. The one with the Wi-Fi was really not picking up much. So we left them out there for 4 days. On the fourth day, we went to pick them up. Now, what's interesting, one of them caught like this, I don't know if it's orbs, kind of looks like orbs, but it could be bugs. Again, go to the videos and see for yourself. And then on the other game cam, it would only work it would shut off in the evenings around when it would get dark. So around 6:37, it shut off and it wouldn't record again until like 9 in the morning. And there's no timer on the game cam.
Oh, it's not supposed to do that.
It's not supposed to do that, and it did it for the 4 days. And on the fourth day, when I went to go pick it up, it was after 6:30. I went late and it was taking pictures of me coming up, so it was working.
And you checked it out to make sure that there's no timer set up. You made sure that was the case.
Yeah, there was no timer. There's no timer on this thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so something messed with the frequency. They shut it off. I don't know, but yeah, something's up there is messing with it. And also at that Pictograph Mountain, I had heard stories before we even been up there of a lot of UFO sightings around that, a lot of strange lights around that mountain. And also there was people seeing a large bird that illuminates lights from underneath. So
a bird that has lights underneath it? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like a bird that's what they say. That it has some sort of light underneath it.
Wow, I was thinking the pterodactyl at first, but this is something different.
Yeah. I don't know if it was maybe a UFO that they saw, but they said it was a bird. And I've heard stories of this group coming in from the East Coast. I heard this from the owner that owns the land around the mountain. We had heard that there was a group coming out of the East Coast trying to capture this bird.
That's, wow. That's all I can say. I love stories like this. This is Cryptid 559 who we're talking with. You can find them on YouTube, Cryptid 559. Also Facebook, Cryptid 559. You're going to see that as Roman numerals there on Facebook. Love finding people that are sincere, genuine, and have stories, have encounters. I rather call them encounters. Yes, so some stories you got to watch out for. So stay with us. More to come, and we'll take your phone calls to Cryptid 559 on Coast to Coast AM. It is Coast to Coast AM. Connie Willis here with Cryptid 559, and you can find them at Cryptid 559 on YouTube and see a lot of great stuff, exactly what they're talking about. And you can also see them on Facebook, and you're going to see Cryptid 559. The 559 is going to look like the Roman numerals. Javier and Jesus talking to us, telling us stories. We got some phone calls to take too. So you guys hang in there. Let's go ahead and grab a call. Let's talk. Let's go to the wild card line number 3. Eric out of Nevada City, California. Welcome, Eric. You are on Coast to Coast AM.
How you doing, Connie?
Great.
Oh, that's good. I actually have a Nevada City address, but I'm like 25 miles out of town. I live up in the mountains. And this area up here, I've been up here 23, 24 years. I was born in Nevada City, but it just got too crowded for me, growing up too big. Spent my entire life in these mountains, and I've seen some things that were just almost impossible to believe. But when you see it, you got to believe it.
I know it, right?
Well, I wasn't on drugs at the time, so I'm pretty sure that was it. Not that I'm on drugs now, but I sure heck wasn't then, But the road that I live back in on, I'm 3 miles back in. It's a dirt road, and it goes through a lot of forest. I mean, a lot of forest. And there's a spot about a mile in on it where it's a level spot, and then it kind of takes this really sharp right-hand corner. And we're coming home really late at night. The elderly lady who lives on my property, she was with me. And we came around the corner, and there was this, I don't know, it had a coyote's head, it looked like. Had coyote fur. The body was definitely shaped like the Arnold Schwarzenegger of hyenas. And, I mean, the head looked like a coyote, but it was like 3 times bigger than any coyote I've ever seen, maybe 4 times. Had to be 350, maybe 400 pounds. And I had the high beams on, and it walked right out in front of my Forerunner. And as it kind of came around the front, it was only about 6, maybe 8 feet away from my door, and I had the window down. And with a lot of the things I've seen up here, I'm getting kind of used to, so they don't bother me too much. When I first moved up here, there was a family of Sasquatch that came across maybe once every other month, and they would actually let me know they were coming about 3 in the morning. They'd start beating a stick on a tree or something, so I kind of got used to that. This thing looked at me, and all the impression I got was, you mess with me, and I'm going to grab you by the legs and say, make a wish. And as big as this thing was, there was no doubt in my mind it could absolutely do that. I've been in the woods all my life. According to my mother, my first summer on the logging job, I was 3 months old. Of course, I don't remember that naturally, but, all the summers afterwards and, up until the time I started school, even the springs, we were up on the logging job. So I've been in these mountains all my life. I've seen things. Actually stepped through a dimensional portal one time when I was 7 years old, me, my cousin, and my brother. And let me tell you, we got out of that. It was pretty scary. And it's the only way I can describe it. It had to be a dimensional portal.
Okay, but first of all, you need your own show. And I definitely want to know, I mean, this is great stuff. And I definitely want to know if you do have a question for Cryptid 559. But tell me about the portal when you went into that. What was that like?
Everything kind of went from, normal colors as you're walking up on a summer's day and the wind was blowing. We were going up this trail up a mountain, and we were on a great big mountain up above Quincy, California. And we're not supposed to get out of yelling or honking range, but of course we did. And there was a big tree laying in the middle of the trail, and as we crawled over and got to the other side, we noticed that the colors were dimmer. There was no wind, and all the way up there was a breeze. No wind, nothing was moving. The only sound we could hear was this little creek that had a little waterfall in it, which sounded like Niagara Falls and shouldn't have. And this horrible, awful smell of rotting flesh. I mean, the hair stood up on the back of our necks, our arms. I mean, we hadn't had hats on, and we probably noticed our hair was standing up on top of that, too. And let me tell you, we got out of there quickly. We turned around. You could see back over the log. The wind was blowing. There was birds flying. You could see all that. But where we were at was just that horrible, awful smell and the sound of that little tiny waterfall, because it was only a few feet away from the trail, and we walked over, and it should not have been that noisy. But it was. It sounded like Niagara Falls. I mean, it was just so loud it was almost deafening. And that smell was just outrageous. So we didn't stay there but a few seconds. We got the hell out of there. Jumped back.
So Eric,
if you everything was fine.
Eric, if you don't mind, can you give your information to Donna, our call screener, so that I can contact you at one point and bring you back on for a show, because you can definitely tell a whole lot of those. I appreciate that. So you guys at Cryptid 559, can you relate to the things that he's talking about?
Definitely, yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Can you elaborate?
On the dog-headed, the Dogman, yeah, I saw that. You know, it had like a German Shepherd. The one I saw, it reminded me of a German Shepherd head, dog head. And then the smell, when he said the rotting meat, we had another encounter at another location where it was me and my cousin and alongside this road, and as soon as we got off the van, it hit me. It was like a skunk smell with the mixture of rotting meat. And I knew someone was there, and there were structures in there and these eucalyptus trees. And I just told my cousin, start taking pictures of any of the dark areas, start taking pictures. And sure, when we got back home, we see this creature. It looks like a Dogman staring right at us. It was right in front of us, 10 yards away.
You know what I notice? It seems about when people talk about the Dogman, it seems like, or at least what Eric mentioned, what you guys have mentioned, they, like he said, it just walked right in front of the Forerunner, and your encounters, they were very close.
Yes.
It seems like, I mean, they really kind of get up to you and let you know, hey, here I am. And,
yeah,
you know, usually the Bigfoot are a lot more stealthy.
Yeah, and I get the feeling the Dogmen, they don't care. They're not afraid of you.
Yeah.
That one that I saw, I don't know if it was trying to sneak up on us, and I just turned around the right time, or it was distracting me from whatever my cousin was seeing down below the river, you know. I don't know if it was smaller ones of them or it was another one that was down there. I don't know.
Were you the person that told me about seeing a leg from a cornfield or something?
It was actually, it was in the same area, Avocado Lake area, behind Avocado Lake and these lemon orchards. There was one night we just parked on the side of the road and we were just listening. And again, this is late at night, 10:30 at night. And we're just sitting in the vehicle with the windows down, and we hear these two loud yells from one opposite of each other in this lemon orchard, and it sounded like answering each other, this crazy chicken sound, and they yelled back and forth, and we were like, "What the heck was that? I never heard that kind of sound before." And then so we were quiet, and I had my spotlight, so I was spotting, you know, where the sound was coming from. I was with the light. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing like branches snap, you know, like it's moving like across the street from us in the lemon orchard. And then I was just panning where I'm hearing the snapping with the light, and all of a sudden I noticed underneath, these lemon trees are pruned up about 2 feet off the ground, so you can see the tree trunk of the lemon tree. But on this particular tree trunk of this lemon tree, I see another one next to it. Like, wait a minute, that's not a tree trunk. It looks like a leg.
It's a leg. Oh.
I can see the calf, and I can see it has very little hair, but you can see like grayish, brownish skin color. And when I had the light on it, I told my cousin, dude, that's a leg right there. But I couldn't see anything above the tree. And then when I said that, it moved its leg behind the tree trunk out of the light.
I only laugh because I know being in those situations when you actually see them, it's like, oh my gosh, I just saw the leg.
It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't a little leg like that. This thing was muscular. And I don't know if it was a Sasquatch, and I don't know if it was a Dogman.
When people describe a Dogman, I don't know why I'm echoing. I hear a huge echo. I don't know if somebody's got the radio on, but they need to turn it down if you do.
Nobody around.
Okay, I'm hearing an echo. But So, what I've noticed about when people describe the body of a Dogman, if you've ever seen on YouTube or some sort of video out there, and I know people have it, there are some viral ones where at the land down under where the kangaroo are, people have videos where kangaroo will come up to somebody's house and they want to get in, or they're looking in the window, and you see an actual, kangaroo. I mean, we're not used to seeing them here, right? But man, their muscles are absolutely amazing. They are unbelievably built. And if you see one of the somebody, go take a look on, some viral video, and you're going to see what sounds like to me what most of you guys describe of the body of a dogman, which is absolutely powerful. And when you see one, you won't believe it. You're like, oh my gosh, that's a kangaroo. Oh man, it's not like the cartoons we grew up watching. So absolutely amazing. Let's see if we can't grab another call here. Gary, wildcard line number 2 out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Hey there, welcome. You're on Coast to Coast.
Hi, Connie. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes.
One person I always admired a lot because he was like a modern day Horatio Alger was he was very honest, was the late Larry Flint. Did you ever get to meet him? He was from Kentucky, but did you ever interview him or anything over the years?
No, I did not. No, I did not. And
what about when you were at QVC? Did you ever meet that Rhonda Shearer?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I used to watch her on USA Up All Night years ago.
Yes.
My question for Javier and Jesus is this: I haven't heard about them in a long time, but in the Texas and the Florida and the Puerto Rico and in Central America, people used to see those chupacabras. And when I was wondering, I don't know if they're from a interdimensional, or if they're from outer space, or maybe there's some kind of hybrid mutant made in a biological laboratory. But have you guys, Javier and Jesus, have you ever seen any over the years? Or
well, we
haven't.
Go ahead, sis.
Go ahead.
We actually near again this Avocado Lake area, we've actually found some prints that have 3 toes, and they look like reptile toes.
Oh, I heard you say the word reptilian. Yeah. and let me say something to that. And thank you, Gary, for your call. I hope you answered enough. Be sure and answer more if you need to. But when you say reptilian, okay, so I got a question for you. And if you need to say anything else, to him, go ahead. But the reptilians, okay, you have talked about UFOs. You've talked about reptilians. Now that came out of you. And then we've got the Dogman, and we've got the Bigfoot. We've got the pterodactyl. Are they, to you, are they all friends? And also, you have spoken before about, usually I hear black cars that hang out. You guys are talking about white cars, and you also spoke about some bushes that got cleared out, or an area got cleared out. We only got about 3 minutes, so I'm going to see if you can throw in as much as possible there.
Yeah. So we found, like the prints, the three-toe prints that look reptilian to us, reptile type. And also, we have these white vehicles that are, when I did my Dogman encounter, it's in the video. You guys got to go watch our videos. They passed, and they were monitoring, they were watching us, see what we're doing. And then they've come across, we've captured them at Pictograph Mountain also. We have a picture of them. And the owner even asked me, who are these vehicles on my property? I go, it's not us. I told them it's not us. So I don't know how they're finding out about the area. I try to stay away from saying exactly where our locations are because of that. At the beginning, I was saying the actual location of where we were going and where we're finding stuff.
Yeah, never do that.
Never do that. What happened when we went back, everything was cleared out. Like, everything was torn down. The whole habitat was gone. So I'm not doing that anymore. So we try to stay away from saying exactly where our locations are.
And who do you think did that? You think it was the landowner? You think it was somebody else wanting to, in the know of these types of things and just clearing it out so you wouldn't come back and talk about it, or just to get them further, deeper into an area maybe and not so close to where other people can go?
Yeah, I think, they told us it was the county. So, but what was funny, it was this landowner's property, but it started at the beginning of the property and it ended at the end of the property. So it was only his section. It was nothing in front of across the river or next to neighbors. It was all the same. It was just his area. So I think they're just someone's monitoring and they're listening, and if you give out the exact location, they're going to clear that area so they can move, go away, and you don't find anything anymore.
Cryptid 559 is who we're talking with. It's a team, and they enjoy their time. Javier and Jesus. Before we wrap it up here, and you can find them at Cryptid 559 on YouTube and Facebook. Jesus, anything you want to say before you go?
Of course, yes. I just want to touch on Eric's point where he mentioned portals. I do have a wild theory about portals, specifically in this Avocado Lake area. So, I have similar opinions or theories behind the portal thing. And Gary's chupacabra question, Javier has came across some very weird carcasses of goats or sheep in some of his other investigations. So, I mean, it's in the realm of possibility that we might have chupacabras running around here in the Central Valley as well.
And you said it was such great accent there. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Javier, we got like 30 seconds. Any last words from you?
Well, I just want to say thank you again, Connie, to you and Coast to Coast for having us. And thank you to all your listeners.
Well, that was quick. Excellent. Absolutely. You're welcome. Javier and Jesus, thank you as well for joining us. It's Cryptid 559. You can find them on YouTube, Cryptid 559, and also Facebook. And they've got some great stuff. Sincere, genuine, real people out there doing it, and all this activity happening around them.
And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Dr. Simeon Hein back with us, former university professor in statistics and research methods. He came across the idea of remote viewing in 1986, somewhat skeptical, but as a result of the training, surprisingly positive, and it convinced Dr. Hein that there is a large area of scientific knowledge that is being withheld from public discussion. Subsequently, he established the not-for-profit Institute for Resonance and began teaching remote viewing classes in Boulder, Colorado, and continues to teach online. He also became interested in topics of crop circles, unexplained area phenomena, and extraterrestrials. Dr. Simeon Hein back on Coast to Coast. Simeon, welcome back.
Hey, George. Thanks for having me here tonight.
How have you been?
I've been really good, yeah. Thanks for asking.
Perfect.
You and I think we talked about 2 years ago when you were here in Louisville.
Yes, absolutely. Love that area, by the way. Isn't it something else?
Oh, yeah, really beautiful out here.
Good. I want to get your reaction. You've been following this story of these objects that we've shot down. People are baffled by these things. I mean, hexagonal, octagonal, balloon-like. What do you think's going on?
Well, these sort of phenomena that defy sort of an obvious explanation have been with us for decades, as our listeners know. And it's just not surprising that we've ignored all, entire range of these phenomena. We've done some remote viewing of these objects over the past couple of days, just out of curiosity.
What'd you uncover?
Well, I had one viewer who refers to himself, some listeners might know him as Psychic X. He really wanted to do some viewing. This was a blind target, and I gave him that object that was shot down over Lake Huron. And what he came up with is that this is some sort of transmedium object that could also go underwater as well as be in the air. And he said that there are probably more of them than just the ones that have been seen so far. It's some sort of data gathering device that has a lot of advanced capabilities.
And I have a feeling, Simeon, that's been going on for years, and we probably didn't do anything about it or know about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think Chris Mellon posted an article on his blog yesterday or today where he said that as a result of the TTSA efforts and his work with Luis Elizondo, that the sensors have been recalibrated on these aircrafts, the radar systems and so forth, so that they're picking up more of these objects that have always been out there, but we haven't really been, detecting before.
You wrote a book last year called Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Form. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, George, as you mentioned, I've been teaching remote viewing ever since I learned about it in 1996. And just as Ingo Swann has said, it was really quite a shock to find out that it even worked. I mean, I was open-minded to the idea. I didn't realize that everyone had this ability, let alone myself. Yeah. So realizing that you could describe targets you hadn't seen yet, very accurately draw pictures of them, it just seemed to me that it made sense to teach other people how to do this because it opens up your mind to abilities that you don't even know you have. And in the process of teaching people remote viewing here in Boulder and many other places around the world over the past couple decades, I came across Bigfoot witnesses here and there, and the evidence started to accumulate that there was really something going on that was very important, especially here in Boulder at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. These people who came to my classes, local people, would tell me during lunch, tell our group, during breaks about encounters they had with Bigfoot for the most part. And I started to see that there were some similarities between this sort of topic and the topic of cryptids and cryptozoology. Some of the phenomena around these creatures, these life forms, whatever they may be, that was very similar to other sorts of paranormal phenomena. And I realized there was sort of an underlying set of scientific principles that really may connect them together.
We have heard three different theories on Bigfoot, Simeon. One is that it's a natural creature, maybe the missing link. Two, that it's dimensional. And three, that it could be extraterrestrial. What do you think of those?
Right. So my initial understanding of this topic came from Art Bell many years ago.
Right.
When he was talking with Lauren Coleman and other people that knew about this subject. And I was convinced for the longest time that this had to be some sort of relic primate, just some sort of very rare primate that existed mainly in the northwest of the U.S. and other parts of the world. But over the years, I've realized that I don't think that that's actually an accurate description of what's going on. The behavior of this creature has many elements that are very similar to humans. And talking with a Russian researcher about a year or two ago in Bailey, Colorado, at one of the Bigfoot conferences, day-long conferences held by the Sasquatch Outpost. He said that the Russian researchers, and Igor's been studying this topic for 50 years. He's probably the oldest researcher to the Bigfoot topic. In Russia, they call it the Almasty. He said they initially thought it was a relic primate, maybe Gigantopithecus, from many, thousands of years ago that had survived the ice ages and so forth. But after a while, they looked at the behavior, the language, the way they walk bipedally and so forth, swim and all this. And they concluded it might be a relic human, just some sort of very rare relative to us, another type of a Neanderthal or something like this. Mm-hmm. But then he added something really interesting, George, that caught my attention. He said it had paranormal abilities, that they had concluded it was a paranormal human. And when you look at the witness accounts of telepathy, mind speak, Igor gave us accounts that we've heard here in the U.S. of cloaking, invisibility, and many other features that just defy ordinary physical reality. When I looked into this, it seemed to me that what Igor was saying was true. It's a human-type being with paranormal abilities that you and I have to actually take classes in to learn how to do, like remote viewing or psychokinesis, that they just naturally seem to possess.
And these creatures have this ability to disappear at will, don't they?
Absolutely. That's what witnesses that I've talked to describe, and you can read about it yourself. David Paulides has examples of this too, where they just seem to literally disappear in front of your eyes. In some cases, the witnesses say they only see like parts of the Bigfoot there, or even more strangely, they seem to jump around the area, almost like a cartoon character from here to there, back again in ways that completely defy our ordinary description of reality. So they really seem to have maybe what Ron Moorhead has described as quantum abilities. You know, he talks about this in his book, The Quantum Bigfoot. Something on that order, really almost another state of matter.
Is it conceivable that the creature may be human but lives in a parallel universe?
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable interpretation of what's going on, because they seem to show up, and then in other cases, you're looking at them, they can disappear, and they don't just disappear like they're gone. There's like a flash of light that Stan Gordon described in his book, Silent Invasion. I mean, I heard him give lectures about this like 20 years ago, about those cases in southwestern Pennsylvania from the 70s. You'll see this luminous phenomena, and that's another thing that really caught my attention. The same phenomena that we've seen around crop circles, the orbs, balls of light, strange luminous phenomena, are also seen around Bigfoot and other cryptids, which is a real indication to me that there's a connection to some underlying scientific phenomena there. You see these glowing orbs around them and strange luminosities that you don't normally see around other sorts of mammals. You certainly don't see this when you go to the zoo. So there's something about them that's really different. And I think the parallel reality idea is certainly a very real possibility.
And where do crop circles fit into this? Are these messages from some other dimension?
Well, for me, crop circles fit into it because, as you know, and as I've described on Coast to Coast over the years when you and I have talked, and I've talked with some of your other hosts, we found a lot of really strange electromagnetic effects around crop circles. And this happened as soon as I went over there with a guy named Ron Russell, who was giving tours, a Denver area artist who was giving tours over there in the 90s. I went over with him in 1997, and even in that summer, I saw camera and battery failure, even to the point where you'd have the solder connections melt in the power supply on a camcorder that was put down in a crop circle. And then other really strange effects, even as you approach the crop circle. So I could see, even in my own equipment, starting in about 1999, that there were electromagnetic effects that really were not explainable in any conventional sense. I mean, as a kid, I used to build electronic kits with my paper route money. So I knew the fundamentals of electronics and radios, but something really strange was going on around crop circles. But the biggest shock to me, George, was to hear witnesses describe the same sorts of things happening around Bigfoot: cameras failing, batteries failing, time loss, a kind of a blurriness around the creature and things like that. I couldn't actually believe that there was a connection between crop circles and Bigfoot and cryptids too. But it seems that there's something going on that's kind of similar between them that makes them create strange effects on our electronic devices.
Why, Simeon, have we not had many crop circle reports lately? I mean, in the past, it seemed like every other week there was a new one across this planet. I haven't heard many now.
Well, to be honest about it, there were people making them in the UK.
Right.
I'm not saying that that was the source of them originally. If you look at some of these books, like I think it's Colin Wilson's book, Terry Wilson, The Secret History of Crop Circles, he describes these going back hundreds of years. But it is true that groups of people made them. And I got to meet these people, and I wrote about it in my book, Opening Minds, meeting these circle makers, initially thinking they were hoaxers, and then realizing that they understood that once you created these shapes, there was a really special type of energy there that they could see affected their electronics, cameras, our equipment, and so forth. And they began to make more and more of these. But I think another way to look at it is these sorts of information and energy can take different forms from decade to decade, and it can switch from UFO phenomena to crop circles. I have met witnesses who have seen meadows and meadow plants flattened by flying discs, UFOs, and so forth. So it's actually a rather complex phenomena. I don't think it has just one source. And I wrote about that in Black Swan Ghosts. I mean, people have seen orbs and balls of light around crop circles. They've seen UFOs. But the interesting thing, George, even the human circle makers described to me seeing the same phenomena when they were out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, when they were about to make these circles, orbs showed up and chased them out of the fields. I know this happened in 1998 in an area called Tosme Copse by Alton Barnes in Wiltshire. And other circle makers described seeing small triangular craft come over the circles as they were making them at night, as almost as if they were inspecting them. So it's quite a complex phenomena. And there certainly was a time when there were more of them. There seem to be less now. But that doesn't mean that, the whole energy is gone. It's probably just transformed itself into other types of phenomena.
Are the orbs and ball lightning one and the same, Simeon?
Yeah, I think they are, George. That's the argument I make in Dark Matter Monsters is Earth lights, Hessdalen lights, orbs, ball lightning, as other researchers argue too. I'm not the first to argue that. People have looked at this very seriously, and as you know, ball lightning goes back hundreds of years. Many people have researched this, written books. It's all really the same type of matter. We could call it coherent matter. It's a fifth state of matter beyond plasmas and the ordinary states of matter that we're used to. It's a type of compressed matter. And the real interesting thing is, why would you see it around Bigfoot and crop circles and UFOs and even haunted locations?
And there's no question there seems to be some intelligence behind these orbs, well, don't you think?
Yeah, that is the really interesting thing about it. And George, even ball lightning researchers are really puzzled by this. And it's not something I can completely explain. Even the most physical scientific explanation of ball lightning as a type of compressed matter that has formed a type of coherency, kind of like the Bose-Einstein condensate that, was postulated by Einstein and Bose in 1925 and then discovered finally actually here in Boulder in 1995. Those states of matter have a purely physics description. You can describe them that way. But when you look at the behavior of ball lightning, it can actually seem like it's intelligent. It can follow people around, animals. And there is a real fine gray zone between orbs, ball lightning, and even UFOs. Even the ball lightning researchers say that they can't distinguish completely between UFOs and orbs. So there's a real continuum here, and it's really interesting how some of it seems to pick up, some sort of intelligence intention. A very interesting subject.
Under whose control, Simeon, might they be?
That is something I wonder about all the time, because if you look at Skinwalker Ranch, which George Knapp and Com Keller,
they're the best for that.
Exactly, and they wrote the book The Hunt for the Skinwalker, and then more recently we had Skinwalkers at the Pentagon by James T. Lukatsky and Keller and Knapp. They go into all these cases around Skinwalker Ranch, and it's not just Skinwalker Ranch, as you and the audience know. It's other locations throughout the United States. Marley Woods in Missouri, Ted Phillips studied that, J. Allen Hynek's assistant, who looked at all those trace cases, and Elbert County in Colorado and parts of Washington State, Yakima area. You get these phenomena, and the orbs, I think a lot of it actually is ball lightning, but you really have to wonder whether someone is directing it in some way. Because, the CIA's own study of orbs, as John Ramirez has talked about on many podcasts recently, the former missile signals intelligence analyst, he said that there was an orb study program classified within the CIA and a UFO program, and the CIA concluded that UFOs can have an orb-like form where they don't look solid anymore. They look more like a plasma.
Mm-hmm.
So there seems to be a continuum of matter and orbs where they sort of switch forms. And that's why it seems like another state of matter that could have a consciousness, intelligence sort of injected into it. And yet at other times it just seems like typical ball lightning bouncing along on a road or moving down the aisle of an airplane. So it's a really interesting question, and I don't have the final answer to it.
And the orbs are about the size of a basketball, you think?
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, George. Ball lightning typically could be a few inches apart. I've seen it twice in the UK in and around the crop circles. The one I saw once with another fellow that was there in '98 looked like a small blue grapefruit, and another time I saw one underneath a cloud that was considerably bigger. But it has varying sizes. But the really interesting thing when you look at this is that there's a micro ball lightning type 2 that is really small, and it can bury itself in metals. It can even have a stealth mode, a dark mode where you won't see it anymore. It actually resembles a black hole. And a lot of researchers think that is actually the basis of what we call cold fusion, low energy nuclear reaction.
Simeon, I've always been fascinated by orbs, trying to figure out where they come from. Might they be from little UFOs, ETs, craft, or some other place?
Well, there's no doubt about it. If you look at the literature, even going back to that NICAP study from the 60s by Kehoe and Lohr called Strange Effects Around UFOs, you often get orbs and balls of light coming off of UFOs, being in the same vicinity, and so forth. But they originate from many different sources. I mean, right. People have seen them around earthquakes. They can be called earthquake lights. And that seems to be due to the compression of tectonic plates really pushing together. And when you get any sort of particles pressing together in a sustained way, it can create orbs, ball lightning. You create these mini orbs, George, every time you generate static buildup. If you walk across a carpet and touch your doorknob, or even on sheets in your bed, you can see that at night. They're there temporarily, but they don't sustain themselves. But when we see them as something that lasts for a few seconds or a few minutes or even longer, that's because they've kind of created this kind of self-catalyzing chain reaction, and it's become a coherent ball of matter where all the particles are at the same frequency. And they can sustain themselves in that form for quite a while. And when they do that, they glow, they give off different types of light. But the really interesting thing about it is they can create these gravitational effects. Ted Phillips at Marley Ranch at one of his lectures from, I think it's the Ozark UFO Conference, in 2009, described a picnic bench lifting off the ground as an orb went over it. Jeez. Like it was pulling at the chains that it was connected to that held it on the ground. And this is what people have described around these orbs. These strange gravitational effects, some researchers call it like a gravitational collapse. There's a lot of really strange effects around them, including space-time distortions. And that's when it really begins to blend into all these other paranormal phenomena that we're all familiar with.
During World War II, pilots saw what they call Foo Fighters, right, which look like orbs.
Yeah. Those very well could have been ball lightning. I mean, I wasn't there at the time, and I'm open to either explanation, that they're an orb type of UFO that we're checking out our aircraft. I mean, I've spoken to people that worked in classified aerospace facilities that said that they saw those balls of light come right through the walls and seem like they were inspecting some of the aircraft that they were assembling at some of these classified facilities around Palmdale. And maybe that's what the World War II pilots were seeing. The other possibility is that those were naturally formed orbs that just seemed to be attracted to technological objects, static electricity, and so forth. It could be one of those explanations. But now that I've learned more about orbs and ball lightning, you have to consider that as also another possibility, in addition to the idea that they're orb-type, orb-looking UFOs.
What happened to that Midwestern town that had some kind of electromagnetic collapse to it?
Well, that is a really interesting story, and someone who had worked in the Pentagon told me that story at a remote viewing conference where I got to meet him and his wife. And what he said was, when he was working at the Pentagon, they picked up in the 1960s that a town in the Midwest had completely had a collapsed electromagnetic field. Nothing electrical worked, including batteries, wristwatches. It seems almost like paranormal, right? I mean, nothing electrical worked, and the people in that town must have really wondered what was going on. It wasn't just the electrical lines. And he told me over at the Pentagon, they really had no idea what was happening there. What could have caused something like that to happen? We can only speculate. Was it a UFO hovering over the town? Was it a small black hole that may have entered our atmosphere that Russian researchers, Alexander Parkhomov and others have speculated have happened? They've seen examples of this in Russia over the decades where gravity collapsed in certain towns for a few minutes.
If it were an X-flare from the sun, it would have been a wider area, I bet, right?
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, not just a town.
What it showed me, George, is that our government monitors every square inch of the U.S., and I think that's why he was very reluctant to have me publicize that story. I did get his permission to talk about this openly, but you'll notice you never heard about this in the news anywhere. It was never discussed. The people outside that town never knew what was happening to them, and it shows us that, literally, if you wonder how these UAPs are detected now that are coming over Alaska or Lake Huron, even small ones, I mean, it showed me that this sort of MASINT, I think, as it's called, measures and signatures intelligence, that the intelligence and defense establishments literally monitor every square mile of the physical U.S. and they can. He never told me how they picked this up, how they detected this. He wouldn't tell me that. We can only speculate, but they can see when these sorts of things happen.
PK, which is psychokinesis. Tell us a little bit about a Soviet experiment that we monitored.
Well, now, psychokinesis is something that I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with. We've all heard about and know about Uri Geller.
Yeah, he's been on the program many times, by the way.
Right. And early on at SRI, as many people know, even before Ingo Swann and Pat Price, they were testing Uri Geller there.
That's right.
And he was able to demonstrate these PK abilities. Russell Targ told me he saw Uri do this once when there was no way Uri could have affected that object in another room physically, but it moved when Uri wanted it to move. So we heard about it from Uri, but what I found out about from this same individual who worked in the Pentagon, and this was another astounding story, is in 1976, one of the U.S. intelligence agencies was monitoring a Soviet PK experiment where the PK sender was 1,000 miles away from Moscow, and he was intending to bend a spoon. And there were 30 people in the U.S. monitoring that Soviet PK experiment. And I asked this individual, I said, did the spoon bend? He said, yes, on command. From 1,000 miles away, that spoon bent. Jeez. They could hear it was a successful experiment. And again, another astounding thing about it is this never made the news. We never heard about this. And I guess if I hadn't persisted in sharing it with all of you, we never would have heard this story outside of that group of intelligence operatives, officials who were monitoring the experiment. But I mean, what that means is the U.S. government had proof positive that PK is real. If you aren't already convinced that they knew about it, but they felt it was more important to keep it secret. They didn't even tell the remote viewing program at Fort Meade about this, even though those remote viewers seem to have known about their Soviet counterparts. So it's just another fascinating story of the paranormal during the Cold War.
Jeffrey Mishlove wrote a book called The PK Man about mind over matter, and apparently it's a big thing, isn't it?
It is a big thing, and I saw a demonstration of this twice near Nagasaki in Japan when I was teaching remote viewing over there a number of years ago. And this individual did not want any publicity. I had to agree not to reveal the location or his name, but he was very good at this. He could levitate objects over his palm. He could take Coke bottles and turn them into like a liquid temporarily and twist them around, in addition to ordinary objects like spoons. And the most amazing thing he did is I was about 15 feet away from him. He gave these demonstrations at his lunch place. His wife would make lunch, and then you'd see this show, so to speak. He actually projected a cigarette that was levitating over his hand into my shirt pocket from 15 feet away.
Jeez.
First try. It went in, George, it came across the room like a torpedo and made a right angle over my shirt pocket and went right in the shirt pocket. And you and I could try to do that all day, and we wouldn't be able to do it. He did it the first time, and then he ran at the end. A friend, someone I knew there who was in the remote viewing class, a surgeon, said, "Would you like to meet him?" So I went back, and he ran his hand over my arm from a distance of a couple inches away, and it felt like pins and needles, like an electrical shock right in my arm, just like Nikola Tesla described being around some of his devices. So it's definitely real. I've seen it. It's the real deal. It's the real thing.
In your title, Dark Matter Monsters, Cryptids, Ball Lightning, and the Science of Secret Life Form, what is the secret life form part?
The real interesting aspect about cryptids and Bigfoot, and whether cryptids a type of cryptid or not, is a subject to debate. But the interesting thing is dark matter, we know, makes up the vast majority of matter in the universe. It's 90% of physical matter. And we also have something called dark energy. And our type of matter that you and I are familiar with is only about 0.5% of all the matter just in our universe alone. And to think that there are life forms that are built around dark matter that could be invisible if they wanted to be invisible, we wouldn't see them because they're based more on dark matter than ordinary matter, is just a very interesting prospect. I mean, you mentioned the idea in the previous segment about Bigfoot's ability to move into parallel realities, which I believe. But even in our own reality, they can apparently cloak themselves or appear as a tree stump or a boulder. People have seen them do this, turn into a bush, something that's reasonably convincing as a bush. It's like they've harnessed another state of matter. And all of the research into dark matter shows us, and this was really astounding to learn this, it's not just something way out there in the cosmos. It streams and fluxes into the Earth. At least one form we call relic neutrinos from the cosmic background radiation. It could be most cosmologists agree that's about 1% of dark matter. We don't know what the rest of it is. But even 1% is more than all the matter we know about. And so this dark matter is flowing and fluxing gravitationally around objects like planets and stars and so forth. And it shows up here on Earth, and the evidence shows that it interacts with us biologically, chemically, and affects all sorts of even radioactive nuclear processes. So it just seems reasonable that there are life forms that are also based on dark matter, too. And just like dark matter is invisible, it seems that these types of life forms would also be able to be invisible when they wanted to be.
Simeon, do you believe we are being visited by beings from another planetary system?
I think the evidence suggests that that's true. Based on all of the evidence I've been able to assemble since I've been studying this pretty intensively in the last 25 years based on my own experiences. But the thing about it, George, that we need to remember is it's not going to show up the way your mind expects it to.
Right.
Just like in a remote viewing session, the data doesn't show up in a way that you expected it to. It's sort of surprising. That's how you kind of know it's accurate. It sort of surprises you. These types of intelligence could be showing up all around us, but we have such strong mental defense mechanisms not to perceive things that don't fit our ordinary sense of reality that you might experience it, and this is true of cryptids too and Bigfoot, and you might forget about it. It might just create a sense of time loss because your brain says, like, does not compute, if that makes sense. So we might be having those experiences, and maybe some people remember it, or some of us have those experiences and you don't remember it. And I'm sure that's true with Bigfoot. There's a very good recent documentary called The Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And in the final section of the documentary, they have psychiatrists and psychologists saying, not only will you have kind of maybe a PTSD response to encountering a huge Bigfoot out there, you might not even remember any of it. And I'm sure that's happening with extraterrestrial visitation, too. It's just too outside the bounds of your ordinary conscious mind's idea of what's real.
If you could get an answer to one question, what would that question be?
The real question, I think, would be is how many types of parallel realities are we all interacting with on a regular basis beyond the ordinary one that we're used to? And then what's the structure of it? And how do life forms move between these parallel realities when, for the most part, you and I seem to be sort of in sort of our ordinary reality most of the time? So how is it that they're able to achieve that kind of fluidity and change forms and so forth? I think that would be the question.
Where do we get your books, Simeon?
Oh, sure. You can get them on my website. I have a special offer for Coast listeners at newcrystalmind.com to get signed copies. I'm happy to send people signed copies of any of these books, Opening Minds or Dark Matter Monsters. And, of course, they're available on Amazon in softcover Kindle. And Dark Matter Monsters actually is also available in hardcover, too. So there'll be an audiobook down the road, too.
But the best deal is at newcrystalmind.com?
Yeah, because I can send it to them directly. I can sign them. It's always fun to sign them for listeners. And, Coast has such a great bunch of listeners. I just love interacting with them, sending them books and so forth.
How did you get interested in all this, Simeon? Was it the remote viewing episode that did it for you?
Yeah, that certainly pushed things in that direction. But honestly, when I was 11 or 12, my mom, who was a bird watcher, took us to the Everglades in the early 70s. And I saw something overhead while we were out there in the swamps, and I thought it was the moon until we both looked at it with our binoculars. And it was a structured object that was bright and as large as the moon. And we went to a ranger talk right after that, and my mom, said, "Hey, the ranger said, hey, did anyone see anything interesting today, right?" And my mom raised her hand and said, "We saw it. You saw a UFO." And the ranger said, "That's interesting. Did anyone else see anything else today?" Totally dodged the topic. So I think it started with that sighting of whatever that object was. It was sort of amorphous, but it had structure in it, solid dots. And I think that got my curiosity going.
Did you ever think you'd be investigating all of this by now?
No, I never did, because I went to school, college, then graduate school, and no one ever mentioned any of these topics. I never heard the word UFO mentioned once in college or graduate school, any of these subjects. I think it was the real shock of seeing how well remote viewing worked and wondering, it had been part of a classified government program. And then you start wondering, well, if they didn't tell us about remote viewing, what else haven't they told us about? That's also equally real. And you just start digging, and you come across all these topics with lots of evidence.
What's the story of a top-level engineer who touched some extraterrestrial spacecraft material?
Right. So I've encountered two engineers that have told me they've handled materials. One of them was a guy named Phil from this area who was okay with me using his name, and I wrote about that in Black Swan Ghost. And he worked at JPL, and he said that one day the managers came into his group and said, "We have this material, but the people left. We can't figure out how it works." And he said, Phil told me they all looked at this material and said, "This is not made here. It's just way too sophisticated." And I said, "So, Phil, you thought it was extraterrestrial?" And he said, "No, I know it was. It wasn't made of any materials that we have here."
That's fascinating. Do you think Roswell happened, Simeon?
One of the witnesses I talked to, who I included in Black Swan Ghosts, she told me, and I just happened to meet her in a deli in Boulder. She said that her dad had flown wreckage from Roswell back to Wright-Patterson in 1947 on that second flight. I think it was called Straight Flush.
The second one, yeah.
Yeah. And she said he only told this to his family right on his deathbed, right before he passed away, to each of his four daughters separately in his hospital room. He said he was scared that if he had talked about it before, that there would be repercussions. And he said the crates were guarded from him and the other pilot by armed guards. So you would have to imagine that material was pretty important to guard it from your own pilots.
Have you ever heard a story of Bigfoot hurting a human?
I have unfortunately heard stories like this. And at least frightening them a lot. And I've read stories about this. Now, of course, I can't totally ascertain, since I wasn't there, whether these are real stories. They seem real to me. And they certainly scared a lot of national park rangers. If you look at some of Rusty Wilson's book, the Fly Fisher Guide, who does fly fishing trips in Colorado, Montana, he's talked to a lot of people who've worked in national parks and national park rangers, and they've described being chased out of backcountry areas and so forth. Yep.
Let's go to Don in Alberta, Canada, international line. Don, my daughter's out that way. She said there's a lot of snow on the ground.
Yeah, there's always a lot of snow here, George. Anyway,
go ahead.
I'll try to be three fast. Thanks for having me on. Moving objects, I worked on it for 7 years. I didn't really have a guide. I just had read Lobsang Rampa, and then there's another guy, Paul Twitchell. I read some of their books, and they talked about creating an energy. And what I found was, and this was the key, I wish I would have had the information, is you need the emotional spark, and then the brain decides what you're going to do, and then it comes through the heart. But by the time I finally figured it out, it was like having a poltergeist in the room. Everything was flying everywhere, or it was like you could literally throw a car off the road. So I kind of left that behind because I was worried about the karmic aspect of it. But moving on to in Jasper, I think it was this last year, there was a guy.
Oh, we lost him.
Got it, and the guy got disappeared. So I don't know what happened. Can you still?
Did you pick some of that up?
Yeah, I did. I mean, this is an open question, George, whether some of these disappearances in parks are related to Bigfoot and cryptids. And certainly some of these other cryptids don't seem always so friendly. So it's definitely something that we should be looking into. I don't know if the evidence is there yet, but it certainly seems like a possibility.
All right, Don, thanks for the call. Next up, let's go to Joe, Monterey, California. Hello, Joseph. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for taking my call, George.
Thank you.
I have two things to talk about. Number one, Bigfoot is indigenous to this planet. And I could tell you why I say this, but let's talk about the orb for 1 minute. Going to a vortex with some friends, I went there particularly to take photos of my guide and some higher beings that I work with. And they took those photos. They were right next to me. And they were huge, like 5 foot orb, like egg-like. And one that was in front was a streak of white light with a smaller bright light. They were almost, you could almost see through them. That's how bright they were. They were really very, looked physical almost, but you knew they were orbs. That was one time. I know who they were, by the way. They were right next to me, so there was no mistake. And I went there particularly for that photo. Now, as far as Bigfoot is concerned, I work at expos, and I was passing a certain row of booths, and there were some channelers, they channel. And sometimes I go by, and I always get messages. And one time I went by, and there was someone said, "I have a message for you." I'm used to this, by the way. This is what I do. And she said, "It's you in a past life." Now, I know some of my past lives, and I know I was from other planets. So he said, "Please forgive me for the genetic experiments and stuff about creating the human race." They did interfere with us. They didn't intervene. They interfered with us. Why would they have Bigfoot as a remnant from our indigenous, our first humans? Because when you're doing a genetic experiments of any kind, you need a control group. You need a gene pool, and you cannot destroy the gene pool. Bigfoot is the gene pool of this planet. A number of races have been playing with genetics and experimenting with the human race. They dumbed us down. That was his message. He wanted me to forgive him. That was me in a past life, way back. So that's my contribution for your search, by the way. You might want to consider that the genetic differences, the changes in genetics across the board from all the races on the planet, and see if it comes back to a commonality. But that's like the missing link that you're looking for. Thank you, George, for taking my call.
All right, Joe. What do you think of that, Simeon?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. I think it makes sense what the caller's saying, is that we're actually the hybrid from Bigfoot. I could totally accept that. And that the reason they have these abilities is that it's just the natural course of nature to be able to change forms and to change frequencies. And for some reason, and perhaps it's what the caller is saying, that we were modified from what the Bigfoot used to be, whatever that creature was, whatever that hominid was, and somehow the abilities were taken away. But the Bigfoot still naturally have that natural telepathy and ability to change forms and shapes. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Could Bigfoot be the missing link between ape and man?
Yes, I think it's a big possibility. We haven't had scientists, and I know some of these people, some of them are relatives of my own family. We haven't had a lot of, anthropologists and, animal specialists, primatologists. We haven't had them really look at this because it's such a controversial subject, right? But it's certainly part of the puzzle, is how we're related to Bigfoot. And are they, as the caller is suggesting, a natural evolutionary product of life on the planet that someone else came along, perhaps extraterrestrials, and genetically modified? And you have to think about the other cryptids, too. Why do you have these other creatures, Dogman, right, that seems like, wolf human?
Yeah.
Frogman, I've read about, seems like frog human. Is that some sort of genetic modification? Is it natural? I don't know, but we good questions. We've got good questions.
How about these red-eyed dogs that people see?
Yeah, that is a really interesting aspect to it. I've talked to witnesses who've said that the Bigfoot they've seen, actually their eyes cast light. They glowed, and not from reflecting the moon or something. They literally gave off light. You hear this about the Dogman, and as they're called, werewolves, Dogman, and Bigfoot, that their eyes glow red. In the witness I talked to, Barbara, she said, and this was from the 1970s on an archaeological dig on the China Lake naval base area where they had permission from the Smithsonian to be out there. She said the Bigfoot that they saw right outside their tent, about 9 or 10 feet, had yellow glowing eyes. Really what's most baffling is why do we humans have such a resistance to talk about these subjects, except on late night radio like this.
Exactly.
Why isn't this part of the public discussion? And it's not just UFOs. Just listen to the calls coming in tonight. Where are people who experience Bigfoot or other phenomena like this? Where do they go to talk about this apart from this show? There's not a lot of places.
There's not a lot of places. That's right.
It's baffling to me, as a sociologist and just as a person, of why society is so resistant to talk about these subjects. That's the baffling thing.
Do you think if science jumped on this, that they'd get some answers?
Well, they are jumping on it, I think. I think you can see it. They've renamed UFOs as UAP, and all of a sudden it's acceptable to talk about it. You just look at the news headlines over the past couple of days.
Oh, my God,
I've had mathematicians come up to me just in coffee shops here just today in Boulder saying, Simeon, what is going on? Tell me, what are we seeing in those skies? So I think it will change. George, 200 years ago, scientists didn't even believe in meteorites. It was considered to be a volcano stone or, something that lightning had.
Yeah.
Everything has been controversial that we believe in as ordinary reality. It was all controversial at one point. And things every century or so, things change. I think we're seeing that again now.
Simeon, do the orbs travel at the speed of light?
They normally seem to be within our gravitational frame of reference. They seem to move at the speeds we're used to. If they move faster like that, we probably wouldn't see them. But it's an interesting question, George, because one of the researchers into this whole subject matter who did fantastic research, Ken Shoulders, who was a colleague of Hal Puthoff's for a while, he described ball lightning orbs as having their own permittivity, which is an object's ability to resist electrical fields. And he said these orbs, the permittivity went down, down, down to make them like superconductors, and it would also increase their speed of light, which is why cold fusion LENR researchers often say that those glowing orbs they see around those experiments are almost impossible to photograph. They're really blurry because they're not in our frame of reference anymore. So it's a really interesting question.
Simeon, are there any objects of these orbs, are there any occupants, like small little ETs or anything like that, floating around inside of them?
Yeah, no, that's interesting you asked that, because I did have some witnesses who saw something like that at Silbury Hill in Wiltshire that I put in Black Swan Ghosts, Paul and Sonia. And they said they saw these three orbs. It's interesting, the caller here is talking about three. They saw them floating down the wheat field on the other side of the A4 towards Silbury Hill. They were at the top of the hill at the time, camping up there. And Paul described to me seeing little beings sitting in each one of them. That's what he described. And so, yes, people see this sometimes, George. That's one case of it.
I've always wondered if they were under some kind of control like that.
Well, just like the last caller, it seems like it's under control, and some of these really do seem like they are under control. And yet even the ones that would just seem like a purely physical phenomena are very sensitive to static gradients, which means they're going to move very carefully around you and your house and go through certain parts of the window. So again, it's a really fine line between the ones that seem just purely like compressed matter and the ones that seem like they're under intelligent control, because some of them really do seem like that.
Simeon, my friend, thank you so much for being part of the program. Keep in touch with us. The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.